the biggest lesson I learned wasn't as I was becoming a developer, it was because I came from the business. Most developers are, I don't want to say most, but many developers, they don't really listen to the business.
Welcome back to Insights by Design, episode 11. We're thrilled to have Adam Mico with us. Adam, how are you?
Doing great.
We are so happy to have you, and thank you for being on the podcast with us. For those who aren't familiar with your work, would you mind just giving us a quick introduction?
Of course, Andrew. So I'm Adam Mico. I'm the principal of data visualization enablement and fluency at Moderna. I'm also an author, a Tableau visionary, a Tableau ambassador, the first Data Fam Salesforce Golden Hoodie recipient, Data Leadership Collaborative Advisory Board member, custom GPT builder, founder of Tableau Next, husband, father, and grandfather, and I also happen to be autistic.
Thank you so much. As Michael and I were preparing to speak with you, we were having a hard time figuring out where we wanted to go because I'm like, Adam's done so many things that are so interesting. It's tough to pick just a couple to speak about.
But I wanted to ask you, Adam, about the term enablement. I think a lot of us are familiar with data visualization, but what's the significance of that third term, data visualization enablement?
Great question. So in many companies, a lot of teams are creating data visualizations on their own without any support. So oftentimes, and that's kind of how I started. I was working as an unemployment insurance trainer and then handed off Tableau at one point because I was good at Excel. I didn't know anything about Tableau. I worked in a silo, skilled up very slowly. And having an enablement arm really gives you the option of not only getting the resources you need, we provide events for our community as well as have a community atmosphere to really engage people to skill up, work together, and utilize our resources.
Okay, so it's not just creating data visualizations yourself, it's empowering or I guess enabling other people to succeed in data visualization as well?
Exactly. So creating data viz is a very low amount of effort in my job these days. I had a hybrid role. Initially, we were more of a center of excellence, which means you're doing enablement and also creating more dashboards. But we recently reorged and we have a lean enablement organization. So you do really need to be an expert in the field to work in enablement because you really have to help people troubleshoot and work in an administrative capacity. But you also want to make sure you could help as many people get to a good percentage of where you are as quickly as possible. So we have the best in show as far as data visualizations, a common language, and the capabilities that other companies wouldn't have if they didn't have a format similar to that.
Okay, so could you talk to us a little bit about your teaching philosophy or your enablement philosophy? How do you help people to upskill, and how do you know that what you're doing is effective?
Great questions. So basically, we listen to our community. So we constantly request feedback from our community to make sure that they have what they need to get started. We look for ways to make things easier for them because there is a significant learning curve in Tableau, for example, if you haven't used that tool before. And especially if you're a person on the business side that barely uses PowerPoint. So you have to jump from PowerPoint and maybe writing on Word docs to creating something brand new, utilizing skills that you didn't know you had yet. So but there's also people that really have a background in data visualization, and they may not need as much, but they also want to be able to communicate stuff with the community, work with the community, and have an impact other than their actual role of data viz. So it gives them an opportunity too. So it's kind of built for people that are proficient and those that want to be there.
Interesting. I love your emphasis on community because a lot of times when we talk about teaching or upskilling, we often emphasize individuals. Like, I'm here, but I want to be here. Could
Mhm.
you talk a little bit more about how you build community and why community is so important?
Great question. So, community wasn't really important to me until I did my work publicly. So, I was working in a silo building data visualizations for the public sector for years. Had no interest in doing anything public or anything like that. But as soon as I started doing data visualization in public, I realized I had a long way to go for design and so forth. And I recognized that I skilled up so quickly when there was the data fam community involvement. So there's a bunch of initiatives, a ton of people that are experts in data visualization giving you feedback and working with you and working with anybody that really wants to skill up. And having that not only in a public way, but at work makes not only learning Tableau or data visualization fun, but it also gives you an opportunity to learn it much quicker than you otherwise would have.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Tableau does a great job of doing public recognition. They've got the Tableau Public and the Viz of the Day, Tableau Ambassadors, of which you are one. You're a 3X visionary. But you've done a good job of expanding it beyond that with Tableau Next, which is really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about the community of Tableau Next that you've built?
Of course. So it really came about when I was an ambassador, and I felt bad for a lot of people that did a lot of great work but weren't really getting recognized by Tableau because there's so many people that contribute, but there's only so many people that can get recognition that have a value. But I wanted to add more to it as more of a community recognition rather than just a Tableau recognition. So in 2022, I released the initial version of Tableau Next, which covered those people that weren't Tableau employees, Tableau ambassadors, or Tableau visionaries, but doing a lot of great work in the community and making an impact. And the thing about it, it's not just me. I'm not nominating anybody. I have a form out and have people nominate and provide their explanation as why they deserve to be part of the Tableau Next cohort. And having that extends my arm much farther than I could because I wouldn't be able to see many of the people because I just don't have time to go through feeds and all that all day. So the people nominating and providing impassioned stories really helps me to become a fan and find new talent as well. But it also gives people that are contributing um, an opportunity to know that they've been seen and that people really appreciate the work they do. And a lot of people, not, I wouldn't say just because of that, but that it doesn't hurt, do more and end up ultimately becoming ambassadors, visionaries, or even competing in Iron Biz competitions because they get a little boost from that and that inspires them to do more. And the output from the Tableau Next cohorts from 2022 and 2023 has just been mind blowing. And many of them are represented today as officially recognized people and also people that may be working for Salesforce right now. So it's really awesome to see those people excelling and people really getting excited about this event because it provides recognition where recognition may not be available to everybody because of there's only so many seats that could fill ambassador seats that make sense and visionary seats that make sense. But people are really doing good work and on their way there, and it's good to have them noted and appreciated that way.
I was speaking with a startup the other day about strategy for how to build community, and they asked me who does it really well, and immediately I was like Tableau. Tableau
Tableau.
does it super well. They've really nailed building that community because I think globally Power BI is more often used, but I hardly hear about Power BI. And I don't know very many Power BI evangelists, maybe Helen Wall, but I know a lot of Tableau, just real big supporters. And Adam, you've done such a good job not only just supporting Tableau, of which you're an expert, but also the data visualization community at large. One of those ways that I love and is super interesting is through the GPTs that you've created. You just recently launched one, but you have another one as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the GPTs that you've recently launched?
Sure. So at work, I create a number of custom GPTs for our specialties. but I wanted to create public versions so people could have the capabilities of those very similarly. So the first one I built was kind of a funny one. It has nothing to do with data, but have you ever watched The Good Place? And
Oh, love it.
yeah, so I created a Janet GPT, so it responds to your questions in a way the multiple Janets would. So the first one was good Janet, which is the default one. Then there's disco Janet, bad Janet, and neutral Janet. So you could ask for any of those personas and communicate with them. So I thought that was the funnest use of GPT technology as soon as it came out. So I launched that just for fun. But the one that's impactful, the next one was now it's called T Data Doctor, which is basically a tool that incorporates all the knowledge of Tableau that's relevant, 12,000 pages of knowledge articles, my custom instructions, some knowledge articles, knowledge I wrote for it as well. And basically, what it's utilized for is to help guide you as an expert would if you have any questions about Tableau. Number of people shared so many use cases. The fun one is if you have an error in a calculation, you could just send this screenshot, and most often because its visual analytic capabilities are so good, GPT-4 inherently their visual analytic capabilities are so good. First of all, they could read everything on the image, and then they right away instinctively provide you a code that you could actually fix your error calculation, and it provides a lot of context with that. So that's really helpful for those that don't need images to learn. So it doesn't formulate images or anything, but it gives you really good step-by-step instructions. And I built it and shared it because a lot of people are creating a lot of GPTs out there that are similar, but who knows what they're putting into them. I wanted to make sure it has the actual knowledge that is shared and vetted knowledge and make sure it gives people really good results. So that was one of mine, which I love sharing, and a lot of people have provided a lot of good feedback on that. The next one is just super fun for me, and that's called Viz Critique Pro. So basically, you could take a screenshot of any of your data visualizations. Obviously, you want a more finished one so it can critique it well. And it provides feedback, actionable insights, as well as scoring. The scoring is just for fun, just because it gives you a lot of people may not want to see the scoring. So I apologize if you see the scoring and it's kind of like a low score. It's like, oh, I don't want to look at this thing again. But it does really provide really good insights and recommendations that really help bump your visualization to the next level. It also has the capability of providing context, so you could provide context to the visualization, so it works flexibly within your context, and it knows what to focus on when it's critiquing, almost just like you're working with an expert data visualization guide, human guide that you're working with, and it's like you tell the human guide, I want you to focus on this particular chart, and here's why, and then I'll break the feedback down that way. The other thing that's really great about it is that so many people don't have time to provide feedback one-on-one, and people don't want to ask people, can you review my viz, can you review my viz? This is the frictionless approach to data visualization review, where it provides really good feedback, but it also you don't have to ask anybody. Nobody sees your information. I can't tell if you're asking your viz for a review. All I could see is that it's being used. So it's completely more or less anonymous. Nobody's going to look at the data or the review, and you could just put it in there and get those results of your critique, of your data viz critique, and you could you could look at it and say, I'm going to use it or I'm not going to use it, but it always provides really good feedback, and it's really focused on ethical feedback as well.
And what is ethical feedback? Because this is something Michael and I have been discussing, especially with generative AI coming out. We're thinking a lot about ethics and application design. What is ethical feedback in regards to visualization?
So understanding what may be looking at content and providing responses to content that look to engage a large audience rather than exclude a large audience. So it's probably the best way I could explain it. is you want to have your data visualizations as accessible as they possibly can be. So if you provide content and context that isn't uh, doesn't provide for that, then it won't really cover that in your review. It may mention something. If you have a data visualization that may be considered unethical, it may mention that part and that it's not being considered. But we don't want to create resources with ethical and biases as well. So we want to make sure that the feedback is neutral, appropriate, and applied to your context.
And you hit on such a good point about trying to make visualizations as broadly accessible as possible. And typically that's focused on physical attributes. And by that, I mean color blindness we talk about labeling and size and shape, but we don't often talk about neurodiversity in regards to data visualization. And as you noted at the top that you're autistic, how can we make data visualization more accessible in terms of neurodiversity?
Excellent question. So Hunter Hansen, who I spoke with about quite a bit about this, uh, shared a lot on this as well. So basically, you don't want to make something too in your face. You want to have slightly muted colors, but something that isn't overwhelming. So if you put a lot of data on a dashboard with no clear guidance of how you're supposed to look at that data, so the cognitive load factor is probably the biggest thing, at least for me as an autistic. Every autistic person has different experiences, but when you are confronted with a dashboard with so much information, so much color, and no reason behind it or science behind why that color is there, why that dashboard is there, it's just a plop. It's actually kind of revolting and scary to look at, and you don't even know where to start to look at. So as a designer myself, I design for people like me, but I also design for everybody else, meaning that I like to design simplicity. So making a data visualization as simple as possible, at least on the surface, but giving people more to dig into with its interactivity or a use of other things that you could include to make it more of a diggable insight driven data visualization for those that want to explore the data. But a lot of people, especially those that aren't very familiar with data visualization or may only see data visualization on a PowerPoint, they don't want to be hit with a bunch of stuff going on. So it's not only for me, I think it's pretty much for everyone else, but I think maybe autistic people may have more of a visceral reaction to things that are shouting at you. It looks basically like it's shouting at you.
Mhm. Yeah, while you were talking, I was wondering if wayfinding could be a useful metaphor for data visualization as well. And wayfinding is often based on the principle of progressive disclosure. If you showed up at the Boston airport and you just had your exact gate number, it could be really hard to find, but airports break it down into the information that you need the most and then allow deeper dives, so to speak. So you say, okay, my gate is A36, gates A are this way, then you go that direction, then it says gates 1 through 10 this way, or gates 20 through 30, or gates 30 through 40, so you know to go towards gates 30 through 40. And then finally you're at gate 36. And it sounds like data visualization can follow similar principles as well. Don't give too much information, too much color, too much cognitive substance at first, but reveal details progressively.
In data visualization, at least with dashboarding, I do something similar in regards to that. So, for example, you have workbooks. Oftentimes, people will put a big dashboard that's like 4,000 pixels long with 20 different charts on it, and that's overwhelming to people. So, I like to utilize something called a landing page that provides an opportunity for people. You could do universal filters there or nice friendly icons that reach the dashboard that you intend to. There's a number of problems with large dashboards with so many charts and a lot of data. Not only is it a cognitive overload at one, two, you have to scroll. And when you scroll, you lose a lot of interactivity. Meaning, if you applied a filter on top, you may forget what what you applied a filter on. You don't see what's going on. And if you're utilizing interactivity in a dashboard, like clicking on something and that provides filter action, you kind of lose track of where you're going as you're going down the scroll. Or even worse, in my case, if people do the left or right scrolling for dashboards, most of the times it's like it's hard for me to get used to that because you're used to reading stuff like a newspaper. So at least scrolling down, that's kind of what humans tend to do. They generally don't scroll left or look left or right for large dashboards. But to get back to it, to get away from that, I like to have non-scrollable dashboards, but utilize landing pages so you could access dashboards and get to specific questions rather than 40 questions on one dashboard that nobody will know how to make heads or tails from.
And all this information is incredibly helpful for creating data visualization. How did you learn it? Did you learn it through study? Did you learn it through experience of experimenting with what works, what doesn't work? How did you learn what works best?
So, great question. So, when I started visualizing data, it was in Excel. I used all the horrible techniques that are used in meme today, like exploding 3D charts because they look cool and the stakeholders like them, and other stuff like that. So, and it wasn't really doing, it was maybe one chart and tables that was Excel. But I was good at VB script and did some stuff with that. So I became kind of the Tableau owner, initially as a subject matter expert with the intent of becoming the owner of that product for our department, which I did. But I learned on my own, and I was only learning I was only considering application. So I was using red, green colors because I'm not colorblind. A couple of stakeholders at that job are colorblind, but they claim they could see the difference between red and green, just to be nice, I guess. And everybody else seems to like red and green. But I learned in a silo, so my practices were definitely not best practices. They're good for an analyst, but maybe not so good for people not used to data visualization or used to that subject. So what made me learn the most is learning what I was doing, working and doing my work publicly, meaning that I was not only focused on creating business style dashboards, I was deep diving into infographics. So I was building a lot of stuff more infographic focused. So it helps me learn how to be a designer, first of all, because I had no clue. My dashboards were ugly and I didn't realize how ugly they were until I saw what other people in the community were doing. And I realized um, if I wanted to be better at what I'm doing about something I love doing, and that was working with data, I wanted to be a better designer. So I spent well over a year studying design, studying the science behind it, looking at so many great examples from the community, working on so many tutorials, not only doing the standard dashboards and graphs that you could do in Tableau, but the more complicated ones that apply trigonometry and so forth. So you could really have an infographic approach to data visualization. So I was going through all that. And although I don't really design in that style anymore, I used a lot of that style to apply to business dashboards. So in order for somebody to use a business dashboard, they generally want to like what they're looking at. So the aesthetics are very important when you're designing a business dashboard. Usually I worry about the aesthetics after I create the initial dashboard and would create the initial product and then work on the aesthetics afterward to make sure it's clean and easy to use. And then finally work on any interactivity for that dashboard. But a lot of what I brought on from what I learned as part of being of the data fam community really helped me skill up way faster than I would have ever done on my own. I think I would still be trying to create word clouds and writing stuff with red and green font left and right. And yeah, it wouldn't have been pretty. So it's been super helpful. And that's part of the reason why I love giving back so much, because they changed my life. and that you really do need to pay it forward to feel good about the impact that they had on you, and to try to make a similar impact back to the people that help support you and those that are new to the community, to make sure it's welcoming.
You suggested a little bit about your work process, and I'd like to ask you a little bit more because I think a lot of, especially beginning designers, can get lost into making their visualizations pretty or making it interactive, but then miss what stakeholders actually want and need and value. And so when you get a request to create a dashboard, for instance, what's your work process? What do you do first? What do you do second? And what mistakes have you made along the way that have taught you life lessons?
Many mistakes. So the biggest lesson I learned wasn't as I was becoming a developer, it was because I came from the business. Most developers are, I don't want to say most, but many developers, they don't really listen to the business. They don't understand the business. So they don't know what questions you're trying to answer with that particular dashboard. And you also want to make sure that you design a dashboard and thinking of those major questions that dashboard is intended to answer. So you have to determine how many major questions do you want to expose on this particular dashboard, or should we break them up? And if we break them up, how do we break them up in a way that provides analysis, a standard flow, and good storytelling technique to your data visualizations, and help guide those viewers? Then you really have to think about, I could build this, this is doable in Tableau or whatever data viz tool that you're working with, and just like, okay, so how could I make it better? So here's this clunky MVP, but I need to improve it before I share it with the stakeholders. So that's when you work on more of the aesthetic touches, like padding, making sure that there's nice white space in the dashboard so it doesn't overwhelm the users. Think more about color, and then work, once you have that down, work on the interactivity. The more interactivity you can include in a dashboard that's reasonable, the better in many cases, especially if you're designing for simplicity, because you want to make it appear super easy to use when you're working with it, but you don't want it to be a simple dashboard. At least that's my approach to dashboarding, because I want people to really get something out of it, whether you're an executive or whether you're an analyst or an SME, really trying to gather something from those insights that you wouldn't be able to get from a standard
Mhm.
dashboard.
I wanted to ask you too about storytelling because you've alluded to storytelling a couple times now. And spatially, I suppose storytelling could be just as simple as the elements you arrange from left to right and top to down. But what other storytelling practices or narrative arcs or character development do you use in your work? Tell us more about storytelling.
So it depends. For business dashboards, what you're referring to is more specific to, um, you wouldn't be thinking of the standard of storytelling in a dashboard for businesses, but you want to make it approach as a story so they have a logical flow to where they're going. Where are you meeting them at their eyes? If you're making multiple dashboards, how do you put them together to construct a story so they can get these minor insights, but also form new ones based on how you're organizing the data and information for them to process? So I think of storytelling in a business setting as more of getting a good flow for your stakeholders and make sure that they're getting the most that they possibly can out of their data, where it does really illuminate insights for them. And that's where I get the storytelling from. But if you're building infographics or something publicly, oftentimes there's actual storytelling approach to it. So, for example, when I built an infographic about the motivation of a lifeline, so I created a visualization where each month was a dot and put it on a curvy line. So my current month is a purple dot. The months that passed are turquoise. The months that are ahead are gold, based on my life expectancy. So it was an infographic that tells a story, albeit a short story, but it provides insight that you normally wouldn't provide to business stakeholders. But for business stakeholders, it's more about logical flow of the information and making sure that they can maximize that intake of information and get really something of value out of it. rather than tell a big story, because most of the time when you're working with businesses and stakeholders, they don't want a bunch of text in their visualizations. Like, I don't want to be told what to think, but I want to be guided to get the best possible insights I
So
can
it
get.
sounds like good storytelling is not just logic, but also empathy for the people who are going to be using your
Yep.
designs.
Yep. 100%. You really have to be empathetic to that approach, because there's nothing worse than if you share a dashboard, nobody has questions, and then you look at it 2 months later and it's supposed to be this important project, but 4 people have looked at the dashboard when there should have been 40 people that looked at the dashboard. So, the impact of quote unquote business stakeholder storytelling, and which would be empathy and logical flow, by how they're using it, and if they have questions or questions on how to iterate on it. Like, developers hate when oftentimes when they do something, they're really proud of their work, and it's like, could you do this too? But that's an opportunity, because that is telling you that the stakeholder really loves what you're doing, but they want, and they're so vested in this, they want to even do a little bit more. So that's one thing that I've learned over the years, that if I am developing and I'm getting asked questions or asked to iterate on something, that's almost always a good thing.
Wonderful. And thank you so much, Adam. This has been so enlightening. Data analytics and data visualization are growing both in popularity and importance. For those looking to really get in and start building in public and making their first data visualizations, what are 1 or 2 things that they can do today that can help them get started on this path?
So one thing is, and of course, since I'm a Tableau Visionary ambassador, I'm gonna highlight that product. But they make it super easy for people to really get involved immediately. So first of all, there's this site called Tableau Public, and you could download a very close approximation of what you would get in a business setting that you would spend a lot of money for free. What more is that you have 10 gigs of space for your data visualizations and data. So if you publish your data visualizations, you have 10 gigs to work with. That's a lot of data, and that's a lot of data visualizations that you could highlight on your public portfolio. The other thing is to connect with DataFam on X Twitter, I call it now, because I won't call it X, and it's no longer Twitter, so it's X Twitter, and also on LinkedIn, hashtag DataFam. And with that, it's kind of like a bat signal. People know that you're around, and we're here to help you out. There's thousands of people in the community. I consider like X Twitter, at least that community. I had no interest in Twitter before I joined the community, but this is kind of like Hangout Saturday with your data nerd friends, where I consider LinkedIn more of casual Friday. So it depends on what's more up your alley, but those are 3 things you could do today. And also look up Tableau Community, because they have a community hub as well, that will get you to the right resources too. They have a weekly blog that they collate the best content and share with the community. They also highlight each of the initiatives that are going on. So if you want to visualize on whatever topic, it's probably covered in one of the community initiatives. The other thing is that there's user groups, so you could really connect and work with a ton of people, both virtually and in person.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Adam, where can people find you?
So I am on X Twitter, as I mentioned. I'm at Adam Mico1 there. Apparently, Adam Mico is taken, but I'm also Adam Mico on LinkedIn. Those are places that you'll find most of my content that I share publicly. So most of the time, I'm more active on LinkedIn these days, just because I really enjoy that community and I enjoy the platform a little bit more.
Wonderful. And we'll link it below. Adam, thank you so much. This was incredibly enlightening, and we really valued your time.
Thank you so much, Andrew and Michael. Really great.
Thank you so much.